It was supposed to be a simple road trip, the kind you remember later as a clean break between who you were and who you became. Mark and I had known each other since college. He was the calm one, the listener, the guy who always offered to drive because he said it helped him think. When he suggested we take a long drive across the state to clear our heads, I didn't hesitate. I trusted him in the quiet, unthinking way you trust someone who has seen you at your worst and stayed. The first hours felt almost warm with nostalgia. Old songs on the radio, coffee stops. The road stretches out like a promise. I remember thinking how safe I felt sitting in the passenger seat, watching the miles slide past, letting someone else decide where we were going. There was one small thing, though. Every time I asked which route he was taking, he smiled and said, "Don't worry. I've got it." He said it gently, like reassurance. I didn't notice then how he never used the GPS, or how the roads grew emptier the farther we drove. I told myself that trust meant not asking too many questions. The longer we stayed on the road, the more the trip stopped feeling like a vacation and started feeling like a routine I hadn't agreed to. We drove all day, stopped only when Mark decided we should. Cheap motels with buzzing lights, rain tapping softly against the windows, the smell of damp carpet clinging to our clothes. At night, we sat on opposite beds, talking in low voices like we didn't want the walls to hear us. He asked me strange questions about my family, my fears, the mistakes I regretted most. I laughed them off, telling myself he was just being thoughtful, trying to know me better. But little things kept slipping through the cracks. Once, I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed my phone wasn't on the nightstand where I'd left it. I found it later in Mark's jacket pocket. He said it must have fallen there by accident. Another time, I saw him staring at me through the reflection in the motel mirror, his eyes distant, like he was watching someone else. When I turned around, he smiled and asked if I wanted coffee. The roads grew quieter. The towns looked half-forgotten, soaked in gray rain and flickering streetlights. I started checking the car doors without thinking, counting my steps, keeping track of my things. My keys went missing twice and showed up again without explanation. Each time, Mark joked about how tired we both were, how travel messes with your head. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. Mark had always been kind. He paid for gas when I was short on cash. He let me sleep while he drove long stretches through the night. Still, there was a tight feeling in my chest I couldn't shake. I noticed how he never slept deeply, how his eyes opened the moment I moved. The way he listened more than he spoke, like he was collecting pieces of me. Every day, I told myself I would say something, ask to turn back. And every day, I stayed quiet, afraid of sounding ungrateful, afraid of admitting that the person I trusted most was slowly becoming someone I didn't recognize. The moment everything broke wasn't loud or sudden. It was quiet, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. We had pulled over at a rest stop just before dawn, the sky still dark and heavy, the air cold enough to sting my lungs. Mark went inside the restroom building, leaving his jacket on the driver's seat. I wasn't snooping at first. I just wanted my phone charger. That's what I told myself. When I lifted his jacket, something hard slid out and hit the floorboard. A second phone. Not an old one, not cracked or dusty, but charged, warm, recently used. My hand started shaking before I even unlocked it. There was no password, like he wanted it found. The messages were open. Long threads, weeks old. Dates. Motel names. My name typed over and over like a label. He'd been sending updates to someone I didn't know, describing my moods, my sleep patterns, what I told him when I thought no one was listening. There were photos too. Me asleep in motel rooms. Me in the passenger seat, mouth open, vulnerable. One message made my chest cave in. He wrote that I trusted him completely now, that I didn't suspect a thing. I remember the sound of my heartbeat drowning everything else out. My ears rang. For a few seconds, I couldn't even feel my legs. I kept scrolling, hoping I'd misunderstood, that there was some harmless explanation waiting further down. Instead, I found plans. Routes chosen because they were quiet. Stops picked because no one asked questions. Notes about how easy it was to guide me without force, just patience and kindness. When Mark came back, I must have looked different, because he froze when he saw me holding the phone. His face didn't twist into anger or panic like I expected. It softened. That hurt more than anything. He sat down slowly and started talking like I was upset over nothing, like I was a child who'd misunderstood an adult conversation. He said he was watching out for me, that I was fragile, that I needed structure. He said everyone needs someone to decide things for them sometimes. I felt my trust tear apart inside me, like something wet and living being ripped free. I thought about every mile we'd driven, every secret I'd shared, every time I'd chosen silence over instinct. I realized then that this trip had never been about escape or healing. I wasn't his companion. I was his project. And the worst part was knowing how easily I had handed myself over, believing love and safety felt exactly like this. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember my body moving before my mind could catch up. Mark reached for the phone, still calm, still speaking softly, and something in me snapped loose. I opened the car door and stepped back into the cold air like I was waking from a dream. The rest stop was empty except for a truck idling far away, its engine a low, patient growl. For a second, I thought about screaming, but the sound wouldn't come. Mark didn't chase me right away. He followed at a distance, talking the whole time, telling me I was scared because I was tired, because I'd misunderstood. He said if I just got back in the car, we could talk it through. The familiarity in his voice was almost worse than shouting. It made my feet hesitate. It made me doubt the phone was still burning in my hand. I locked myself in the restroom, my hands shaking so badly I dropped the phone twice. The light flickered overhead. I stared at my reflection and barely recognized my own face. Pale, older, like someone who'd already survived something and didn't know it yet. I tried calling for help, but there was no signal. I slid down against the wall, listening to Mark's footsteps stop outside the door. He didn't bang on it. He didn't threaten me. He just waited. Told me he wasn't angry. Told me he understood why I needed a moment. He said he'd always been patient with me, hadn't he? The words crawled under my skin. I felt stupid for ever thinking safety was loud or obvious. The rest stop went quiet again. I don't know how long I stayed there. When I finally opened the door, Mark was gone. So was the car, my bag, my wallet, everything except the phone in my hand, and the echo of his voice telling me this was for my own good. I got help hours later, or maybe days. Time blurred after that. I know I survived physically, but sometimes when I'm sitting still and the world gets quiet, I feel like I'm still on that road, trusting someone else to decide where I'm going. And I'm never completely sure I made it all the way back. I don't talk about that trip much. People notice the changes instead. How I flinch when someone insists on driving. How I memorize exits, keep my phone charged, ask too many questions. They think it's anxiety, something abstract. They don't understand that it's memory, still alive, still teaching me lessons I never asked for. What stayed with me wasn't the fear of being hurt. It was the realization of how easily trust can be shaped into a weapon. Mark never raised his voice. He never forced my hand. He just taught me slowly, patiently, until I fit the version of myself he needed. That's what terrifies me now. Not strangers in the dark, but familiar faces in daylight who say all the right things. I've learned that safety doesn't always feel safe. Sometimes it feels warm and reasonable and quiet. Sometimes it sounds like reassurance. Sometimes it looks like a friend offering to take the wheel, so you can rest. I still think about that first stretch of road, how calm it felt to let someone else decide the direction. And I wonder how many people are traveling right now, feeling the same comfort, not realizing how far they've already gone. I still remember how excited I felt packing the trunk that morning, like I was finally doing something right with my life. The road trip was supposed to be my reset. 3 days, 2 states, no responsibilities. Just me and Lena, my co-worker, who had slowly turned into the person I trusted most. She was older, confident, the kind of woman who made decisions without apologizing. When she offered to plan everything, I felt relieved. I was tired of being the one who worried. The first few hours were perfect in a quiet way. Sunlight spilled across the dashboard. Our reflections pass over fields and gas stations. Lena talked about her past trips, the strange people she'd met, the way roads revealed who you really were. I listened, grateful to have someone who seemed to know exactly where she was going. There was a small moment I think about now. At our first stop, I noticed she'd already booked a motel I didn't recognize, far off the main highway. When I asked why, she laughed and said detours were more honest than straight lines. I remember smiling back, ignoring the tight feeling in my stomach. I told myself this was what trust looked like. Traveling with Lena quickly settled into a rhythm that felt almost domestic. She drove most of the time, one hand on the wheel, the other draped casually near mine, like reassurance I didn't realize I was craving. She chose when we stopped, where we ate, which roads we took. I told myself it was nice not to decide anything. The world outside the windows blurred into long stretches of asphalt, cornfields, and rain-soaked towns that looked half asleep. At night, The motels felt strangely sealed off from the rest of reality. Curtains are always drawn. One lamp on. Rain ticking against the glass like someone tapping to be let in. Lena liked to talk in the dark, her voice low and thoughtful. She asked about my childhood, my failed relationships, the things that made me feel small. When I hesitated, she said sharing was how people stayed safe. I believed her. I wanted to, but there were moments that didn't sit right. I woke up once to find my suitcase open, my clothes folded differently than I'd left them. Lena said she'd been looking for the charger we shared. Another time, I noticed she'd moved my ID into her bag so I wouldn't lose it. She smiled when she said it, like she was proud of being responsible. The roads kept getting quieter. Fewer signs. Fewer cars. Sometimes I'd glance at her, expecting to catch her watching the road, but she'd be watching me instead. Not openly. Just quick looks she thought I didn't see. When I asked where we were exactly, she'd answer vaguely, saying places mattered less than people. I started keeping track of small things. How often she checked her phone when she thought I was asleep. How she locked the car doors the moment we got in. How she corrected my memories of conversations, gently but firmly, until I wasn't sure what I'd actually said. I told myself I was tired. Those road trips mess with your sense of time. Still, every night, lying in unfamiliar beds, I felt a quiet pressure in my chest. Like I was slowly being rearranged piece by piece and somehow agreeing to it. I found out by accident, which somehow made it feel more honest. We'd stopped at a small grocery store just before sunset, the kind with buzzing fluorescent lights and narrow aisles that smell like dust and cleaning spray. Lena stayed in the car, saying she had a headache. I took her phone with me without thinking, meaning to use the calculator. Mine was dead again. That should have bothered me more than it did. The screen lit up immediately. No lock. No hesitation. A notification banner slid down before I could look away. My name was in it. I stood there between shelves of canned soup, my hands numb, scrolling through messages that weren't meant for me, but weren't exactly hidden either. Long voice notes sent to someone listed only as M. Lena describing me in pieces. My moods. My insecurities. How easily I deferred to her. She talked about me like a case study, like something unfinished she was shaping carefully. She said I needed guidance. That I resisted at first, but always came around. There were messages about routes chosen to keep me calm, motels selected because they were isolated, reminders to herself to stay gentle when I got anxious. One line made my stomach drop, so hard I thought I might faint. She said people like me didn't realize how badly they wanted to be led. I don't remember checking out. I don't remember walking back to the car. I just remember sitting in the passenger seat, the door closed, the air too still. Lena noticed my face right away. She didn't ask what was wrong. She already knew. She sighed like I'd disappointed her and took the phone from my hand. She didn't deny anything. That hurt the most. She said she cared about me, that she saw potential I didn't, that this trip was about helping me become someone stronger. She said if she hadn't stepped in, I'd always let other people decide my life anyway. I tried to speak, but every word felt borrowed, like she'd already rehearsed them for me. I felt grief before anger. Grief for the conversations I thought were mutual, for the trust I'd offered freely, thinking it was being returned. As the car pulled back onto the road, I realized something cold and final. She hadn't tricked me. She'd studied me, and I had mistaken being understood for being safe. The air inside the car felt heavier after that, like every breath had to pass through her first. Lena drove with the same steady calm, humming softly, as if nothing had changed. I stared out the window, watching the landscape darken, realizing with a sick certainty that she knew exactly how trapped I felt. The road narrowed, trees pressing in on both sides, their branches clawing at the edge of the headlights. The words came out thin and unsure, like a question instead of a demand. She nodded slowly and said we would, just not yet. She said turning around right now would confuse me, that I needed time to process. The way she said my name made my skin crawl, like she was grounding me back into place. When I reached for the door handle at a red light, she locked the doors without looking at me. Click. Such a small sound, but it echoed through my chest. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten me. She just explained calmly that I wasn't thinking clearly. That fear made people impulsive. That she'd promised herself she wouldn't let me sabotage my own growth. I felt myself splitting in two. One part of me wanted to scream, to fight, to draw attention. The other part was tired. Too tired to argue with someone who spoke with such certainty. That terrified me more than the lock. How easily my resistance drained away under her steady voice. Eventually, she pulled into a rest area and got out of the car. I don't know what she expected me to do. Wait. Calm down. Accept it. Instead, the moment she stepped away, I climbed over the console, fumbled with the locks, and ran. I didn't look back. I just ran until my lungs burned and my thoughts scattered. I got help. Someone called the police. Statements were taken. Lena was gone by the time they looked for her. Sometimes I wonder if she let me run, if this was another lesson I was meant to learn. I don't know which possibility is worse. I went back to my life after that, but it didn't fit the same way. People still describe me as quiet, agreeable. They don't see the constant negotiation happening inside my head now. Every suggestion feels like a test. Every kindness comes with invisible strings I'm trained to look for. What Lena taught me wasn't confidence or strength. It was how dangerous it is to confuse being guided with being cared for. The scariest betrayals don't feel like attacks. They feel like they understand, like someone finally seeing you and deciding they know you better than you know yourself. I've learned that control doesn't always come with cruelty. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in concern, delivered in a steady voice that tells you it's all for your own good. That's the kind you don't notice until you try to leave. Sometimes when I'm driving alone at night, I think about how relieved I felt at the start of that trip, letting someone else choose the road. And I grip the steering wheel a little tighter, reminding myself that trust should never cost you the right to decide where you're going. I agreed to the road trip because I didn't want to disappoint him, which already says more than I like to admit. Evan was my boyfriend then, the steady kind everyone said I was lucky to have. He planned ahead, remembered details, and corrected me when I forgot things. After a rough year, that kind of certainty felt like love. When he suggested a long drive to the coast to reconnect, I told myself it was exactly what we needed. The morning we left felt gentle and ordinary. Cool air, packed snacks, the sound of tires humming against the highway. Evan held my hand at red lights and talked about the future like it was already decided. I remember feeling strangely relieved not having to imagine it myself. He insisted on driving, said it relaxed him. I didn't argue. I watched the city thin out behind us, buildings replaced by trees, then nothing at all. At some point, I realized I hadn't told anyone exactly where we were going. When I joked about it, Evan smiled and said surprises were healthy for relationships. There was a moment, just a flicker, when I noticed he'd turned his phone face down and switched off mine to save battery. I let it go. Love, I thought, meant not keeping score. The first day passed almost perfectly. Evan drove through winding roads, and I watched the sunlight change over the hills, feeling like nothing in the world could touch us. He chose the cafes, the stops, the little towns we passed through, and I went along. He made everything feel intentional, as if every mile mattered because he had planned it that way. But the longer we drove, the more I noticed little things that didn't fit. The GPS would glitch, always directing us through side roads that seemed unnecessarily long. Sometimes I'd glance at him while he was talking, and his eyes were locked somewhere beyond the road, distant, almost unreadable. Once, I opened the glove compartment to grab my jacket and found it already moved and neatly folded in a way I never left it. I mentioned it jokingly, and he laughed, a slow, soft laugh that didn't reach his eyes. At night, we stayed in motels off the main highway. The rooms felt cold despite the heater running. He would sit on the edge of the bed, talking in low tones about my anxieties, and how he was just trying to help me manage them. I started noticing patterns. My bag would be slightly shifted, my phone would be moved, or the windows locked without me remembering it. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Evan had always been calm and thoughtful. He took care of me, made me feel safe, made me feel like I didn't have to think about a thing. But that nagging doubt grew each day, subtle, like the way a shadow creeps along a wall at sunset. And I stayed quiet, because questioning him felt like betraying the person I loved most, even as my own instincts screamed that something was wrong. Little by little, I realized the road was no longer a place of escape. It was a place where someone else was quietly deciding everything for me, and I didn't know how to stop it. I found out the truth in the middle of the night, though it had been building for days. We had stopped at a small, empty rest area somewhere along the coast, the fog rolling in like a curtain over the dark highway. Evan said he needed a walk to stretch his legs. I stayed behind in the car, tired, half asleep, letting the mist and the hum of the tires lull me. I reached for my phone to check the time, and that's when I saw it, my messages, my photos, my location history, streaming across his tablet left on the passenger seat. At first, I thought it was some bizarre coincidence, maybe a synced account, but the messages told a different story. Weeks of notes, photos, and voice memos about me. Detailed observations. How I slept, how I reacted to stress, what I liked and feared. One file even had a short video of me dozing in the passenger seat while he drove. My stomach dropped. My hands shook. Every mile we'd driven together suddenly felt like a trap I had walked into willingly. I thought I knew him, but he had been recording me, cataloging me, planning each moment to see how I would respond. He wasn't loving me, he was studying me, guiding me, shaping me without my consent. When he returned, I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. He didn't get angry. He smiled calm, gentle, as if nothing had changed. He told me he was just helping me see my best self, that I didn't understand the care behind it. He said I was resistant at first, but he knew I'd eventually trust him completely. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. I realized then that every soft word, every guiding hand, every act of care had been a layer of control. I had mistaken meticulous manipulation for love. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body betrayed me, frozen in shock, my mind scrambling to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the one who had been quietly monitoring me, orchestrating every step. The betrayal wasn't violent. There were no knives, no yelling. Just a smile, a calm voice, and the heavy, unbearable weight of knowing someone you trust can shape your world without permission. That night, I felt entirely unmoored, a passenger not just in a car. I sat in that car, staring at the fog swirling past the windshield, my chest tight and my hands trembling. Evan leaned back in his seat, calm, watching me as if he were reading a book he'd already finished. The silence was heavy, like the weight of a sky about to collapse. When I finally spoke, my voice came out thin and uncertain. I told him I wanted to go home. He didn't react with anger, didn't try to grab the wheel. Instead, he smiled softly, shaking his head. He said I was being dramatic, that leaving now would undo all the progress he'd been helping me make. He said I didn't understand yet, that I needed to see things through. I remember gripping the door handle, the lock sliding with a soft click beneath my fingers, and realizing it had been set before I could act. My pulse pounded so loudly I thought he would hear it. Fear wasn't a sudden surge, it was slow, intimate, creeping into every thought, making my body tremble even when my mind screamed to move. Eventually, we reached a deserted stretch near a coastal cliff. He parked, stepped out, and turned to me still calm. He said I could wait inside the car if I needed to calm down. And for a moment, part of me almost did. But another part, the part that had been screaming since the tablet, refused to be contained. I climbed over the console, unlatched the doors, and ran. I didn't look back, even when I heard him call my name softly, almost like a lullaby. The fog swallowed me, and I ran until the cliff ended, until my lungs burned, until my fear became exhaustion. By the time I was found, or maybe I found my way back, it didn't matter. Evan and the car were gone. I survived physically, but every time I close my eyes, I'm back on that road, hearing his soft voice guiding me, feeling the calm, suffocating weight of someone who knows exactly how to shape you without your consent. And sometimes I wonder if I ever fully escaped at all. I returned to my life carrying pieces I couldn't shed. Friends and family noticed changes, quiet hesitation in my laughter, careful calculation in every choice, but they didn't know the truth. I didn't tell them. How do you explain that the most personal betrayal can arrive in a voice soft enough to sound like love? What I learned is terrifyingly simple. The people who seem to care the most can also be the ones who manipulate best. The danger isn't always sudden or violent. It's patient, intimate, subtle. Someone quietly mapping the contours of your trust until there's nothing left for you to decide on your own. I drive cautiously now, checking locks, guarding my phone, never letting someone else hold the map. But sometimes, when the night is quiet and the fog presses against the window, I hear that voice in my memory, calm and guiding, and I remember the road where I let someone else choose the path. And I shiver, because I know how easily trust can be turned into a trap. I never thought a simple road trip could feel like stepping into a trap. My cousin Jake suggested it one summer, saying we needed a break from everything, work, family, life. I trusted him. He had always been protective, the kind of person who made me feel safe even when I doubted myself. When he offered to drive, I didn't hesitate. I thought of the freedom ahead, open highways, roadside diners, quiet towns I'd never seen. The morning started calm, almost perfect. Windows down, the smell of pine drifting in from the countryside. Jake hummed along with the radio, cracking jokes, teasing me about my nervous habit of checking the map every few miles. I laughed, feeling relaxed for the first time in weeks. There was one small thing that felt off. At a gas station stop, I noticed he didn't fill my water bottle or check my snacks like he usually did. When I mentioned it, he waved it off, smiling, saying he knew I was capable of taking care of myself. I smiled back, trying to dismiss the unease curling in my stomach. I told myself I was overthinking. After all, I trusted him. That trust, I would learn, was exactly what made me vulnerable. The first day of driving felt like a memory I didn't want to question. Jake chose the route, the stops, even the playlists. At first, I thought it was nice to let go, to be a passenger in someone else's plans. The countryside rolled past, green and endless, and for a while, I let myself believe everything was safe. But small things started to unsettle me. My phone battery would mysteriously die after being full. My wallet moved from my bag to his glove compartment without explanation. One night, the hotel room key card vanished, only to reappear tucked under the mattress. I noticed him watching me sometimes, not looking at the road, not looking at me exactly, just somewhere in between. When I questioned him, he'd smile gently, saying I was tired, stressed from work, letting my imagination run wild. I tried to believe him. I wanted to. But each night, as the motel lights flickered and the rain tapped against the window, the unease grew heavier. He made small adjustments to my life on the road without me noticing. Rearranged my luggage, suggested I sleep earlier, moved the car closer to the far edge of the parking lot. I told myself it was just care, just habit. But the quiet control, the constant subtle observation, started to feel like a cage I had stepped into willingly. By the third day, I noticed my reflection in the rearview mirror staring back at me with attention I didn't recognize. Every glance at Jake was laced with the faint awareness that I might not be as safe as I thought. And yet, I stayed silent, letting him guide us further into the unknown, telling myself it was trust, not fear. It happened the evening we stopped at a tiny roadside diner in the middle of nowhere. The neon sign flickered, the rain dripping off the awning, and I felt a strange sense of calm, as if nothing could touch me. Jake went inside to use the restroom, leaving his jacket on the seat next to me. I reached for it to grab my phone charger and noticed something tucked into the pocket. A small envelope fell into my lap. Curious, I opened it. Inside were photographs, me taken during the trip, sometimes asleep in the passenger seat, sometimes walking outside the motels. Alongside them were notes, meticulously written, my routines, my reactions, the way I got anxious, the moments I relaxed. There were detailed observations about everything I had thought was private. My hands trembled. My chest tightened. The realization hit me like a freight train. Jake had been watching me this entire trip, cataloging me, recording every detail. The care he had shown wasn't kindness. It was manipulation. When he returned, I barely looked at him. He smiled calm, like he knew I had found it and was expecting my reaction. I just wanted to keep us safe, he said softly, as though that explained everything. He talked about how careful planning could prevent mistakes, how he was helping me avoid stress. The words should have reassured me, but they felt like chains. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the envelope at him, to run, to shake him until he admitted how long he had been doing this. But my voice caught. All I could do was stare, feeling my trust crumble into pieces. Every shared laugh, every joke, every moment of comfort I had let him in, how easily I had mistaken control for protection. The betrayal wasn't violent, it wasn't loud. It was slow, intimate, devastating because it came from someone I had loved and trusted completely. That night, the road didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like a carefully constructed prison. The tension inside the car was unbearable. Jake drove like nothing had changed, humming softly to himself, glancing at me from time to time with a calm smile that felt like a blade sliding against my skin. I clutched my bag to my chest, trying to steady my breathing, every instinct screaming that I needed to get out. I told him I wanted to leave, to turn back, to go home. He nodded slowly, as if humoring me, saying I was tired, stressed, not thinking clearly. He said he knew what was best for both of us, that I would thank him later. The ease in his voice was suffocating. For a moment, I wondered if I was imagining the manipulation, if I was overreacting. We stopped on a narrow road near a cliffside. Fog rolled in from the ocean, swallowing the headlights. Jake stepped out of the car, telling me to stay calm, that he'd parked us somewhere safe. He leaned casually against the hood, watching me. I could see the control in the way he moved, the quiet confidence in how he expected me to obey without question. I couldn't. My body acted before my mind could protest. I swung open the door, stumbled over the center console, and ran. The wind and fog slapped my face, the cold air burning my lungs, but I didn't stop. Behind me, I could hear him calling softly, almost kindly, telling me it was okay, that I would understand someday. By the time I found a main road and flagged down another car, Jake and our vehicle had vanished into the mist. I was physically safe, but the terror hadn't left me. Even now, I replay that drive, his calm voice echoing in my head, reminding me how easily trust can be twisted. Every time I close my eyes at night, I feel the weight of that road, the pressure of someone who knows exactly how to bend me without force. And sometimes I wonder if I ever truly escaped, or if a part of me is still back there, running and listening. I returned to my life, but it didn't feel the same. People notice I'm quieter now, more careful, measuring my trust in ways I never used to. They call it anxiety. I know it's more than that. It's a memory, sharp and alive, reminding me that the person you believe will protect you can be the one who shapes you into something you didn't choose. Jake never shouted, never raised a hand. His betrayal was slow, subtle, intimate. It taught me the hardest truth. The most dangerous people aren't always strangers. They wear familiar faces, speak in gentle tones, and tell you it's all for your own good. You don't see the chains forming until they've already wrapped around you. Now, when I drive alone or plan a trip, I double-check everything, trust cautiously, and question every kindness. I've learned that control doesn't always announce itself with violence. It can arrive softly, invisibly, in the guise of care. And sometimes, late at night, I think about that cliffside road, the fog rolling in, and I shiver. Because I remember how easy it was to follow someone I loved, believing I was safe, not realizing I had already lost the map. I thought the idea was harmless, a weekend road trip with my neighbor, Claire. We had lived in the same building for years, casually friendly, sharing occasional coffee and brief chats in the elevator. When she suggested a spontaneous drive to see the mountains, I didn't hesitate. It felt safe, familiar. The kind of trust you give someone who lives right next door, who laughs at the same jokes as you, who seems harmless. The morning was crisp and bright. Claire drove, singing along softly to old songs on the radio. I watched the sunlight bounce off the hood of the car, the trees lining the highway stretching endlessly. She talked easily, the kind of chatter that makes the miles shrink. I remember feeling a strange sense of comfort, like being in the right place at the right time, under the guidance of someone who seemed responsible, kind. But there was one thing that lingered in the back of my mind, a flicker of unease. At the first gas station stop, she insisted on paying for everything, even my coffee, without letting me contribute. Her smile was warm, but something about the insistence felt controlling. I brushed it aside, laughing and telling myself it was just generosity. I didn't realize then that it was the first hint of a pattern I'd come to recognize far too late. The first day on the road felt easy, almost too easy. Claire chose the route, the diners, even the playlists. At first, I told myself it was nice not to worry about details, to let someone else make the decisions. The countryside blurred past the windows, golden fields and quiet towns passing like a dream. But little things started adding up. My water bottle would disappear from the cup holder, only to reappear later in her bag. My jacket was moved from the back seat to the passenger seat, folded perfectly. Sometimes I'd glance at her while she was driving, and she'd be staring at me, not the road, not anything else, just watching me. It felt deliberate. At night, the motels felt too quiet. One flickering lamp, the hum of the heater. She'd talk to me in low tones, suggesting when I should eat, when I should sleep, even when I should shower. She called it care, but it started to feel like a set of rules I had to follow to avoid upsetting her. I tried to dismiss it. I told myself I was tired, that the stress of a long trip made me paranoid. But there was a pressure that built slowly, intimate and subtle. My belongings shifted without explanation, doors locked automatically. Her presence felt constant, like a shadow I couldn't shake. By the second night, I noticed myself hesitating before reaching for anything, double-checking each step. Every laugh and casual joke began to feel rehearsed, measured. The trust one had offered freely started to twist into suspicion. The road no longer felt like freedom. It felt like a cage I had stepped into voluntarily, piece by piece, under the guise of companionship. It wasn't a single moment of violence or anger that broke everything. It was quiet, subtle, almost tender, which made it worse. We had stopped at a small, nearly empty rest stop just before dusk. Claire went inside the restroom building, leaving her jacket draped over the seat. I reached for my phone charger and noticed something folded in the pocket. It was a small notebook, filled with notes about me. My habits, my moods, the things that made me nervous, the things that made me happy. Names of places we had passed through, every hotel, every cafe, every quiet stretch of highway. There were observations about how I reacted to stress, how I slept, even how I spoke when I thought no one was listening. My chest tightened, my hands shook. Each page revealed a careful, deliberate cataloging of my life, my personality, my vulnerabilities. I had trusted her completely, and in return, she had been recording me, observing me, planning every interaction. When she returned, she didn't act surprised. She smiled softly calm, like she had expected me to find it. She said, "I'm only trying to help you." Her words should have reassured me, but instead, they felt like chains tightening around my chest. She explained that she could guide me, help me avoid mistakes, and protect me from stress I didn't even realize I carried. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw the notebook at her, but my body froze. The love and familiarity I had felt turned to disbelief and heartbreak. Every mile, every shared joke, every kind word suddenly tainted. The betrayal was slow, intimate, and devastating because it came from someone I had believed was safe, someone I had invited into my life willingly. I realized then that the road wasn't about freedom, or even about seeing the mountains. It was about control, about shaping me quietly, patiently, without my consent. And I had given her the keys to do it. That night, I understood a truth I would carry forever. The people who seem to care the most are sometimes the ones most dangerous when trust becomes their tool. The car felt smaller after that discovery, the air thick with tension I couldn't shake. Claire drove with the same soft, deliberate calm, humming quietly, glancing at me now and then with a smile that chilled me. I gripped my bag tightly, every instinct screaming that I needed to escape, but my legs felt heavy, trapped in a haze of disbelief. I told her I wanted to turn back, to go home, to leave. She nodded slowly, speaking softly, telling me I was tired, that I wasn't thinking clearly, that I would thank her later for guiding me. Her voice had the weight of certainty, the kind that makes you question your own judgment. The familiar trust one had once given freely now fog-shrouded parking lot on the edge of the highway. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. She stepped out, leaning against the hood, her calm presence suffocating. She told me to stay in the car, and said she was keeping us safe. Her words, gentle and deliberate, almost lulled me back into compliance. But I couldn't. I swung the door open, scrambled over the center console, and ran. The fog hit me like cold water, the wind stinging my face. My lungs burned, my heart hammered in my chest, and I didn't stop. Behind me, I heard her voice calling softly, coaxing, telling me it was for my own good. I didn't look back. By the time I reached a main road and flagged down another car, Claire and our vehicle had disappeared into the mist. I was safe physically, but the memory of that drive, the quiet manipulation, the intimate control, never left me. Even now, I replay it in my mind, hearing her soft, guiding voice, wondering if a part of me is still out there on that road, following someone I once trusted completely. Returning home didn't feel like safety. I carried a quiet vigilance everywhere I went, a constant calculation of trust. Friends and family noticed my caution, my hesitation to let anyone else take control, and they called it anxiety. I know it's more than that. It's memory, alive, persistent, teaching me lessons I didn't ask for. Claire's betrayal wasn't violent or loud. It was patient, subtle, intimate. It reminded me that the most dangerous people don't always arrive as strangers. Sometimes they come in familiar voices, with gentle words, and make you believe their guidance is care. The kind of betrayal that leaves no scars to see but deep, invisible cracks in the foundation of who you thought you were. Now I drive carefully, double-check locks, guard my phone, and question every kindness offered too smoothly. I've learned that control can be soft, invisible, disguised as protection. And sometimes, when the night is quiet, I remember that foggy parking lot, the chill of the air, the weight of her soft voice guiding me. I shiver because I know how easily trust can be bent into a cage, and how quickly freedom can feel like a memory you can never fully reclaim. I didn't want to go on this trip, but my best friend, Kevin, insisted. He said it would be fun, a way to celebrate finally graduating college. I trusted him completely. He'd been my anchor through years of late-night study sessions, heartbreaks, and family drama. When he suggested a spontaneous road trip to a secluded lake he'd visited as a kid, I thought it was harmless. The morning started easy, almost idyllic. Kevin drove, singing along to old playlists, the windows down, the wind brushing against our faces. The air smelled like pine and asphalt. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe, like I didn't have to plan every detail or anticipate every problem. But there was a flicker of unease I couldn't shake. At the first rest stop, Kevin insisted on paying for my snacks, brushing my hand away when I tried to contribute. He smiled warmly, but there was a subtle edge to it, a control I didn't recognize until later. I laughed it off, telling myself it was kindness. I didn't realize that it was the first sign of a pattern that would slowly trap me on this road. The drive started normally, but as hours passed, I began noticing small things that felt off. Kevin chose every stop, every diner, every route. At first, I thought it was just convenience, enjoying not having to make decisions. But gradually, I realized he wasn't just choosing, he was controlling. My bag would shift mysteriously in the back seat. My jacket would be neatly folded when I hadn't touched it. My phone would mysteriously run out of battery despite being fully charged, only to reappear face down on the passenger seat. And sometimes I caught him staring, not at the road, not at the scenery, but at me like he was studying my reactions, memorizing my habits. At night, the motels were eerily quiet. A flickering light here, a heater humming there, and Kevin sitting on the edge of the bed, asking subtle questions about my fears, my routines, my weaknesses. He framed it as care, as concern, but the way he suggested when I should sleep, what I should eat, and even how I should pack my things began to feel like control. I kept trying to tell myself I was being paranoid. Kevin had always been thoughtful, protective. He'd helped me through everything in the past. But each night, as the rain tapped against the window and the rooms felt small and cold, I realized that my trust had become the very thing that made me vulnerable. By the second day, I found myself checking doors, counting belongings, and hesitating before moving. Every gesture of kindness felt calculated. Every soft smile became suspect. The road, which I had imagined as freedom, was becoming a place where I could no longer distinguish care from control, guidance from manipulation. It happened without warning, in a way that made it impossible to ignore. We had stopped at a deserted lakeside rest area, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. Kevin went to use the restroom, leaving his jacket on the passenger seat. I reached for my phone charger and noticed a folded envelope sticking out of the pocket. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of me throughout the trip. Me asleep in the passenger seat, me walking along the roadside, me laughing and talking in motels. Alongside the photos were detailed notes, observations of my moods, reactions, and vulnerabilities. Every habit, every quirk, every moment of trust one had offered freely had been documented. My hands shook, my chest tightened. I felt my stomach drop as the realization hit me. Kevin had been watching me, recording me, cataloging me, orchestrating every moment to see how I would respond. The care he had shown was manipulation. I had thought I was safe, loved, and trusted. Instead, I had been an object of study, a project in his control. When he returned, he didn't act surprised. His calm smile only made it worse. He said softly that he was just trying to help me, that he knew what was best, that the trip was meant to guide me to my best self. The words felt like knives sliding under my skin. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw the envelope at him, but my body froze. Every mile, every laugh, every moment of closeness suddenly felt tainted. The betrayal was slow, intimate, and devastating because it came from someone I had trusted completely. Freedom, an escape now felt like a trap. The control he had wielded so quietly and carefully left me unmoored, unsure of what was real, what I could trust, and whether I would ever feel safe again. That night, the lake, the mist, the quiet hum of the tires on the highway, all of it became a memory of betrayal I would carry forever. The tension inside the car was unbearable. Kevin drove with the same calm, deliberate manner, humming softly, glancing at me occasionally with a smile that now felt predatory. I gripped my bag, my hands trembling, every instinct screaming that I needed to escape. I told him I wanted to turn back, to go home, to leave. He nodded slowly, speaking softly, telling me I was tired, that I wasn't thinking clearly, that I would understand later why he had guided me. His voice carried certainty, the kind that made me doubt my own judgment. I felt trapped, but fear wasn't sudden. It was intimate, creeping into every thought, filling my chest until I couldn't think straight. He parked on a narrow road overlooking the lake, the fog rolling in thick and cold. He stepped out of the car, leaning casually against the hood, still calm, still smiling. He told me to stay inside, saying he was keeping us safe. The gentleness in his tone almost lured me back into compliance. I couldn't. My body acted before my mind could protest. I swung open the door, scrambled over the center console, and ran. The mist hit my face, my lungs burned, and my heart hammered in my chest. Behind me, I heard his voice calling softly, coaxing, reassuring, telling me it was all for my own good. I didn't stop. By the time I reached the main highway and flagged down another car, Kevin and our vehicle had vanished into the fog. I was physically safe, but the psychological terror didn't end. Even now, I replay the drive in my mind, hearing his soft, guiding voice, feeling the suffocating weight of someone who knew exactly how to bend me without force. Every time I close my eyes, I feel that road stretching ahead of me, the fog, the quiet control, and I wonder if a part of me is still trapped there, following someone I once trusted completely. I came home, but home didn't feel like safety anymore. I carry a quiet vigilance with me everywhere, the instinct to double-check locks, to guard my phone, to question every gesture of kindness. Friends and family notice my hesitation, my cautious trust, and they call it anxiety. I know it's more than that. It's memory, sharp, alive, a constant reminder that someone you trust completely can manipulate you without ever raising a hand. Kevin's betrayal wasn't violent, loud, or dramatic. It was subtle, patient, intimate. It taught me the hardest truth. The people who seem most harmless, most familiar, can also be the most dangerous when trust becomes their tool. Control doesn't always come as threats or anger. Sometimes it comes softly, invisibly, disguised as care. Now, when I drive alone or plan trips, I calculate every step, guard every decision. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I remember that foggy road, the cold mist, his soft, coaxing voice. I shiver because I know how easily trust can become a trap, and how quickly freedom can feel like a memory you can never fully reclaim.